Hey, 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 welcome back to another episode. Today, I want to talk about breaking generational curses and why it's just so important and why it has helped me once I realized, what was going on. First of all, what are generational curses? What are generational um, timelines. I feel like it's a timeline. And it's something, in our family genetics. The best way I'm going to explain it. Don't quote me. I could be missing a step or two. And if I am, I'll definitely have another episode on this topic. But the way I've, understood and explained generational curses is it's a habit or habitual behaviors that our family genetics, like someone in our family, it starts with someone, right? It could be like a great, 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 like seven, eight, nine greats, grandparent, say, grandfather, and it makes its way through the bloodline. And so every generation. And so for me, a great example, I don't even know how far it goes back, to be honest, but people used to make alcohol all the time, in the 1800s and early 1900s. Well, my grandparents were born in the early 1900s, 1800s. I actually think my great grandparents were, but my mom's dad, my maternal grandfather, and I found out also, my fraternal grandfather. So both grandfathers, both my mom and my dad's, were both drinkers. They were both alcoholics, and call it what you want, right? I mean, I just call it for face value. And they had an alcohol problem. They had an alcohol addiction. They had an issue with alcohol, right? And so my dad's dad, my dad didn't have a relationship with him that I'm aware of until right before he died. But him and his second wife, actually my dad's stepmom, I didn't even know I had a stepmom until, or a step grandma, until recently, doing some family genetics. And my dad's been gone for 20 years. I mean, it's just wild what you learn when you do your research. And anywho, um, they had a bar. They owned a bar in California. So like, I would have never known that. Um, and so then also, so here, genetics of alcohol. And then my dad was a Navy guy, and he got into the Navy right, at his 18th birthday. And he was a Navy fighter pilot, and he ended up going into World War II. He said they did a lot of drinking and a lot of smoking cigarettes there. And he never smoked. He just didn't like it. It smelled gross. So it just wasn't for him. But he had tried a few drinks, and he just didn't like how it made him feel. So he watched the relationship between his father and his mother and what alcohol did. Even though it wasn't a lot, it was enough. And so his dad, he really wanted to kill his dad for a long time, he said, because he just didn't like how his mother was treated. And then she ended up becoming a single mom and raising him and his brother, his younger brother, who was 6 years younger, by herself. And so, like, there's history, right? So I didn't learn these things until later. Um, After I got sober, mind you, too, because you start asking questions with sobriety, I feel like. And so I took, and um then I found out, this is all wonderful stuff, especially if you're somebody who maybe you're trying to get sober, or maybe you're trying to stay sober, or maybe you're just like on top of the world kicking ass with sobriety. Like, I never know where somebody's at. And honestly, at any moment, those can all like happen and change throughout sobriety. So like, it's not uncommon for us to feel like, do I still want to be sober? It's a very normal feeling. But I always go back to my family genetics when I feel like, should I have that drink, or will one drink make a big difference? Like, holidays are coming, and I found this sip and sample paint party, but I was thinking more like change the alcohol to non-alcohol beverages. And then my niece said, like, like she was talking about, oh, we can have mimosas, but we can make them alcohol free, virgins. And I started thinking about the different ways. And then it just leads you back to those memories of drinking, and they're just not that fond, to be honest. And so I'm always like, do I need the mock drink? You know what I mean? Because it's really not worth it to me. And so for me, vices, I pay attention to those, but I also pay attention to those generational timelines. And so I think back and I'm like, okay, so my dad had willpower and he chose to never drink. My whole life he was sober, his whole life. I don't ever remember him ever drinking a drink, a beer or nothing. Not even like not a shot, like not nothing, not a glass of champagne. Like he'd have a soda pop, he'd have water, he'd drink coffee, but like never alcohol. Um, and then my mom was an alcoholic until I was 5 years old. And so she obviously was sober during my pregnancy. And I don't know if she drank off and on before I was born. I know she had a drinking problem. I know she was a bartender. Like I know I'm pretty confident that she was a drinker steadily in between pregnancies with my siblings and I. And she was a bartender. She did some singing. She did a lot of waitressing, like things of that nature. My dad was a musician. He was a country western musician who had his own band. So, obviously alcohol was in that environment. They'd play at bars and restaurants and taverns and like different places, different community events, like um, all over Arizona, California. Like they were just all over. And so Vegas, like they were just everywhere. Um, and so I know that stuff was in their environment. My mom, at 5, when I was 5, I just remember so many moments like where we'd have to hide the silverware, or we would have to hide things under my bed, and my uncle would help us make a fort. And you probably have heard this in other episodes. If not, you're hearing it now. But it was just those moments of fear, of just being afraid, worried that because we had bunk beds and the bottom bunk was mine, and so I knew like all the knives and all the forks and like all the things that could stab somebody and hurt somebody were like under my bed. And I always had this fear like she was going to come in and find them and hurt somebody, because she was just so loud and so angry at the world, and my dad was just trying to calm her down and get her home. There's just moments where she was just so aggressive, and I forgive her. That's one of the things that I had to come to grips with was we can't change the past, but we definitely can change our future. And the past, if you hold on to those things and you don't let them go and you don't forgive somebody, it's just poison in your body. And for years, I let that poison me. And I was so angry at her. She probably has no idea. If she listens to this today, she's probably going to be kind of shocked. But I love you, Mom. And so I'm just so grateful that we could get it together. And I think me getting sober really impacted our relationship in a better, healthier way. But for a lot of years, those generational curses would follow. So, what I witnessed is I witnessed my siblings and myself fallen into the addictive patterns and behaviors, whether it was drugs or alcohol, cigarettes. Like people, we have to understand that people model people. And so, a mom's impact is huge on their kids. And so for me, coping as a kid, I started drinking alcohol very, very young, like ridiculously young. Like people probably did a long time. And a lot of people haven't, believe me, but for a long time, when I would share my testimony, my story of my alcohol journey, they would think I was making it up because I was just so dang young. But the reality is I watched the adults besides my dad, but he was working all the time. So all the people that were really around me, uncles, my mom, like I watched them just drink a beer, to numb it, just drink a mixed drink to numb it. And so I just assumed that that was how you fixed it. They would have a problem and they would go grab a beer, and they would just be like, fuck it. And so I, I just don't know. That's just my explanation, because as a kid, we weren't taught to turn our feelings on, and we were taught to turn them off and numb them. And they all had their own skeletons that they were trying to heal from and deal with while trying to raise a bunch of kids. And that's just the truth of it. And so I didn't realize that that was like had even happened. I blocked so much of it out until I was about 19. And so I went through battles off and on throughout my childhood and my early adolescence of off and on drinking, off and on using. But I always felt like I had willpower when I needed to. And so I was an active alcoholic. And so I could still go to work, I could still function. A lot of people had no idea. A lot of people today probably still are shocked when they hear me say that I've been sober since Christmas of 2017 by the grace of God. Praise God, He gets all the glory. I wouldn't be here today without Him. Literally, I know. And so for me, it probably really shocks a lot of people still because I didn't really get loud about it. But here's the truth. I I'm positive people knew, you know what I mean? Like, I think that I would be a fool to think that I was keeping that behavior a secret when it's so out loud. Most people who are drinking, it's very obvious, or they're using, it's very obvious you're intoxicated with something, right? It's not a secret. And that's the part that is so crazy today. Cause I think back and I'm like, you weren't fooling anybody but yourself. Like, you were only hindering you. Like, yes, you were hindering relationships, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, you weren't fooling anybody. Like, you weren't pulling any wool over anyone's eyes. And um and that was something that I felt really a lot of shame and guilt. But what flipped that script for me and took me out of the mindset of it's about me and poor me, and I'm angry at this person, I'm bitter at this person, and just becoming, so bitter about it, was realizing those generational trauma and the generational curses were real. Realizing that um, they do impact like our day, like our days and our nights and our life, and sometimes they're out of our hands until we realize they're there and we can find some understanding in them. So if you are somebody who reads the Holy Bible, in the New Testament, in the book of Isaiah, well, I guess I have the Everyday Life Bible by Joyce Myers, and I absolutely love it. And so like I when I was reading that book, it really helped me understand because it's like an amplified Bible, so you can actually really break down there. She's got a lot of good like little side notes. But the book of Isaiah in 2021, I was able to walk through that journey, and through that, God really showed me, and Jesus really showed me where my life began and why it transpired the way it did. And it was such an eye opener for me that there was just so many good points. There's just so many moments, but it prepared me for two of my older siblings passing away unexpectedly. One I had a really was literally the only sibling I had a relationship with today, and was literally my best friend, you know what I mean? And the other one I had only met when I was a baby. I think my last memory was when I was really, really little. And so, but they both still hit. And it was those generational curses that the book of Isaiah opened my eyes to, the alcohol, the abuse, the trauma, the different things, right? The molestation. There's just patterns that repeated themselves in our family that I started acknowledging for the truth, and really just seeing the truth in things. And then I decided to go to my children, and I said, my grandchildren are all very little, so I wasn't going to go to them, but I went to my children who are adults today. And my daughter had been struggling with a lot, and my nephew had lost his dad, and my nieces had lost their dad. But I decided that I would go to them, and I seen them starting to drink alcohol to cope. And I knew that if I didn't speak up, the Lord called me to speak up. And if I didn't speak up and I didn't explain to them what generational curses were, and I did not take the time to love them in their moment and really listen to them, but really also explain our family genetics and what I learned. That I would be wasting all of that I had learned. Like, it would just be pointless. I didn't just learn it for myself. I learned it to heal my family. I learned it to break those curses. I learned it to make better so we can make better choices to have a better future, right? And so I spoke up, and it wasn't easy. I'm going to be honest with you, it was very uncomfortable. But the Lord called me and I just listened and I was guided, and intuitively I just paid attention, and I just was so blessed that um they could hear that. And my daughter stopped drinking. We were just talking about it yesterday, and she stopped drinking. She didn't want to be a part of that generation of the same repetition. She'd already had an incident in her life where one of those generational curses hit her, and she decided it wasn't going to hit again. Two of them, actually, I could say two of them. And she decided that this was one she had control of. And so her sons have a sober mom and have always had a sober mom. But that's so important. And I'm just so dang proud of her, right? But it also allowed my other, my nieces and my nephews to make their own choices, to make their decisions, but also healthier decisions. I see each one of them making healthier choices with alcohol today. I see them wanting to make change and help other people today. And with, when it comes to that. And so I think it really does boil down to, are you willing to repeat those same things over and over that our parents did and our grandparents did and our great grandparents and so on did, aunts, uncles, the things, or are you willing to be the person that's saying, no, it ends and it stops with me. Like, my children and my grandchildren and my greats won't have this in their lives. Like, it stops with me. And I feel like that's the abuse, the domestic violence for us. My mom was a DV survivor before my dad. Like, this is history, this is patterned behavior that they talk about. My parents did have arguments and fights that, some were very serious, and some of the things that they said, that I think that's partly too why I stayed in marriages. And it's not their fault. It's just pattern behaviors, right? We model. Not what I didn't understand is, had the men that I was with, if they were truly wonderful, fantastic, wonderful, beautiful souls like my dad, um, then we could have worked through it with the way that my parents did, right? But they were complete polar opposites of him. And so there was no negotiating with narcissists. And so um that is one thing I did realize. And so, like, I mean, and it was my truth in that story. And so, generational curses, you get to decide that it ends with you. And I think that so many people think they just have to, well, my mom went through it, so I guess I have to go through it too. My dad went through it, so I guess I have to be like him and go through it too. That's false. I think that we feel like we have to, you know, please them. We feel like we have to be um, given permission, and a lot of people are getting upset that marriages aren't lasting longer, that relationships aren't, lasting long, that people are cutting off their own family when they should be putting up with toxic family. It's just their family. They should be to put up with it anyways. That's all false. We do not have to completely cut people off. But if we choose that that's the healthiest and it seems to be the safest, then you do what you have to do. I have cut plenty of people out of my life. And I still send them unconditional love. I still, intuitively, if I think about them, I send them unconditional love. Um, and I don't feel bad that we don't talk anymore. I don't feel bad that we don't hang out anymore. And I used to, but I don't anymore. And the reason why I don't anymore is because we weren't healthy together. And I need to surround myself by people who vibrate higher. And it's not any offense to anybody, but that's just where I'm at in my life and in the season I'm in. And I know that even family, I set healthier boundaries. So breaking generational curses, there was one point when my journey began, um, and gosh, almost 5 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long. But when my journey began, that my oldest daughter, she was really upset that I started my network marketing business, my health and wellness company. She was so upset. It was, it's a faith-based company. She thought that I had gotten into like this like cult and that, I was going to other people had planted the seed to her that I was most likely going to use, my granddaughter Olivia, who passed from cancer, that I was going to, use her death as like a moneymaker, with this business by sharing my truth and my story and my journey, that, I was trying to like profit off of it. And that was furthest thing from the truth. And so we had, when your child hurts, whether you know it or not, when your child hurts, you're usually the parent is usually one of the first, or usually is the first one being like beat up. You know what I mean? We take a beating, um because they need something to take it out on. And so I immediately recognized that, because I had been working on myself. And I had learned that it wasn't, when someone has an attitude thing like that, it wasn't about me. It had something to do with them. It was all just perception, right? And so I didn't take it personal. And I used to. Before working on myself, I used to take everything very, very personal, get offended very easily. And so I didn't take it personal. I knew she was hurting. And so I finally, though, knew that emotionally I couldn't take it either. Like I couldn't take the things that she was saying and that other people were saying. And I knew that if I kept our relationship going, that it would not ever be healthy again. That it would actually probably we would end up not talking. Like we would not have a relationship. And I felt this and I knew it. So I just prayed, and it was on my birthday. I went over there, and nobody acknowledged my birthday. And I really didn't care, but I did care a little bit. And she was pregnant with her, oldest son. And it was almost a year after Olivia passed away. And I had been in my business for 6 months. And I just looked at her and I said, "Look, I can't do this with you anymore." Like the bicker back and forth, like it was really, we were drained, right? And it had been, almost a year, 11 months of that back and forth, attitude and being shunned and just, oh gosh, and she couldn't tell me to my face how she felt, but she could tell other people, and she was really hurting, and I get it. And so I just had to take a break. And so I just told her, I have to take a break from you. I blocked her on social media so she didn't see my posts about my business and stuff. And then I just told her, don't call me, like, don't, and just you take time for you, and she didn't like it, and I didn't like it, but I knew in my heart, like, we needed a break. And so I'd never had the courage to do that to anyone in my life, not even a spouse, not even a partner, like, and I was doing it with my oldest daughter who had just lost her daughter. And you talk about mom guilt. But I knew that I had to break those generational curses, because I watched my mom and her mom bicker and stuff like that in my childhood until my grandma had a stroke. And then after she had her stroke, my mom took care of her and they became like really close, right? But it took her having a stroke, and it took my grandma, like, that was my grandma, like that stubbornness she had too. And I didn't want that for us. I didn't want another tragedy to bring us together. Like, that's really what had happened with Olivia, because we'd always butted heads, because I was always so afraid that she would, I got pregnant with her at 14. I had her at 15. I was scared to crap. Oh my gosh, the crap was scared out of me throughout that entire journey. And then when she hit close to my age, I just really freaked out and the fear took over. So I parented with a lot of fear, which created a lot of problems in our lives. And so we'll have another episode on parenting. Don't worry. and uh and so I just, for me, I knew that had to do with a generational curse. I just knew it. So I took a break, and it was actually, I missed my oldest grandson's birth. I wasn't there for it. Um, and I, my mom would show me photos, and she would like give me updates, and I'd say, that's wonderful. And I would just pray over it and talk to God about it. And, um, and he would just reassure me it was all going to be okay. And, and then my, I was headed to Colorado for a work event in 2021. And it was during COVID time, everything was COVID, so it was like really sketchy. But she had come over right as I was leaving, and she wanted help with she was filing for divorce from her son's dad, and I wasn't there. I was gone, and so my mom's like, she's not gonna be back for almost a week, and so but I just thanked God when my mom sent me that message saying that she, had come by, and God gave me the courage to take a break so she could see things for herself. And she broke generational curses by making a choice to do that. Um, she didn't want her son to go through things that she'd gone through and her siblings had gone through, and their childhood. And by her doing that, his dad also got sober. And so, you never know the impact you're going to make by sobriety and by you choosing a better way for yourself. Now, I'm not saying alcohol is bad. I'm saying some of us don't know how to turn it off, and don't know how to know when enough is enough. If you can have a drink or two and you're good, I am so freaking proud of you. Like, you rock. But for me, if there's a bar and they've got all the booze, I'm gonna drink it till it's gone. And that's how I know I'm an alcoholic. Um, I have been sober since Christmas of 2017, and it took a year for me to dump two Costco size bottles of booze down the sink. I kept asking, a couple family members kept asking me if I could give it to them, but why would I want to put my addiction on somebody else? And so I dumped them down the sink when I was ready, a year. Um, I went from giving Santa rum and cokes to and hot toddies, to giving Santa milk and cookies, and it really was that big of a change. And I've been a mom for, almost 30 years. Next month will be 30 years. And so, like, I've been around the block a time or two, and I've had a few Christmases, and a lot of them are blocked out and I don't remember them because of the alcohol. And that is, that's on me. Um, but I'm grateful for what God has given me today. And I'm grateful that I don't live in my past anymore. So those mistakes and those choices and those ones that weren't so great that were made, don't have to haunt me. Right. And I think that's what so many people with generational curses and with addictions and behaviors, forget, we forget that we can let them go, and that they're not ours to hold on to. Those things that we did were lessons that gave us blessings. And if you find a lesson in the blessing, you will learn that that's how we break those generational curses. Forgiveness is such a powerful, powerful tool, and it's healing, because, see, nobody wants to hold on to the poison. And what you don't understand is that, well, what a lot of people, I can't say you, and just everybody, but I would say a lot of us, I know for me personally, I didn't understand that, um, bitterness and being angry at people or situations. I've had a lot of shitty situations happen in my lifetime that I held on to for a really long time, that actually helped me not see a lot of really good, beautiful moments in my life where life was really good, and where I had a lot of awesome memories that I could have shared with my kids and should have expressed and hadn't. But I'd hold on to the bitterness, the anger, And I was so resentful, right? And I was just so revengeful. Like I just wanted to um just I never received the apologies for the harm that had been done to me. And justice was not served with in any of those situations legally, right? And so for a long time, I was really angry about it. And that anger led to me doing a lot of self harm. It led to me wanting to have a lot of suicidal attempts or just thoughts. It led to a lot of depression and anxiety and panic attacks and PTSD and just so much trauma um, that I allowed, and I'm saying this out loud because I want somebody to hear it. I allowed myself to get to that point because I held on to those things that weren't mine to hold on to. And so when I read the book of Isaiah in 2021, it was about this time. And the women that I was reading and doing the Bible study with, it was too hard for them. They just weren't ready to read it, I guess, right? But I would share my ahas with them. And then something in my life would happen that would directly correlate with that Bible verse or with that study I had done that day, that chapter I'd read. I kid you not. I would watch it, just the veil coming off, and I would just see the transformation happening within my family and within myself and my life. Um, and just the things that transpired throughout that whole story. And I would have these visions, and God would show me, and I would have these conversations, and just I would hear the Holy Spirit just showing me my worth, showing me moments and timelines in my life where why this happened was for this. Why this happened was for this. And I would just see these things. And I was in awe. I was in awe that I was fortunate to be open enough to spiritually feel the healing work being done, to spiritually see it within myself and to witness it. And being somebody who's an empath and who, one of my higher faculties is intuition, and being a dreamer, somebody who dreams things and they come true. Having that as a gift, and knowing my mother has it, knowing my children have it. A lot of people don't take you seriously. They think you're full of crap. They think you're making it up. I've just learned to it's okay if you think I'm batshit crazy. Um, I know what I've felt, and it's not, I know it's all real. And you can't tell me that it's just me trying to cope. Like when I'm in somebody else's vision and we both remember it, like you can't tell me that I'm just trying to cope and they're just trying to cope, and it just doesn't work like that. And energy is real. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll talk about that more. um but I know that that has helped me break generational curses too, and I know not everybody has that gift, or not everybody knows how to unlock it. But I am going to have other episodes where I do talk a little bit more about that, because I think so many of us need to hear it, and I think that not enough people talk about it. They're afraid to. I was for years, for decades, I tried to drink this gift away. And it doesn't work like that. And so for me, generational curses are almost like, I don't know if you've ever heard of a paradigm. Bob Proctor talks about paradigms, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about that in another episode too. But they really are very much the same, very much a paradigm. And so I've learned that too. And a paradigm is basically just a multitude of habits we that are good and bad, and we want to try to take the ones that aren't so good, or and change them. And usually they're habits that were developed from birth to 7 years, and so it's really hard to just unlock. My birth to 7 years was hell. Like, I'm just going to be transparent. And so between generational curses and these paradigms, I have been able to unlock, and I'm changing habits. And so that's really what we're boiling down to is, you get to choose habitually. You get to choose, is this something that's good for me, or is it not so good for me? And I think that was my biggest thing. Was I was a people pleaser. I had gotten caught up in the cycle so much that people pleasing was so high and intense that I didn't like confrontation. I was worried about what people thought, and that really does change who we are. And so there's just so much I can go on and on and on. But I want to just leave you with knowing that you do not have to settle. And I think so many of us think that, well, my mother went through it, like I talked about earlier. My mother went through it, my grandmother went through it, my aunt, my this, my that, my whole family went through this, so I guess I have to do it too. Wrong. It doesn't matter how old you are, you can stop it right now. You can change the trajectory of your entire family patterns, and your grandchildren, your children do not have to be exposed to it. And I think that that's where those boundaries come in and the decision making. And it's not going to be easy because habits, because of paradigms, they're going to come in and they physically can make you ill. They used to give me headaches and make me want to vomit and make me so sick to my stomach, and my stomach would hurt. Like, I'm not exaggerating. My whole body would hurt. And so like I would get migraines, and now that I recognize it and it can't do that, now it tries to go after my back, where I have my back injury. And now if I recognize that, I can combat that too, right? And so like a multitude of habits, and you never know. Sometimes it's just pattern behaviors that we start noticing within ourselves. It's part of self-assessing. But one of the ways I want to tell you to break generational habits, I don't want to just leave you with all this information, but not give you some tools. So something that my life coach taught me that I really love, and I was just actually talking to my husband about it this morning, um, is okay, something I really love is that she says, once a week, choose a day where you're just having a down day and you're not doing anything else, and like pick a little bit of time, even if it's just an hour, where you just self-assess. And you never want to talk about anything negative or something bad that happened. Instead, you want to say, what are 3 to 5 things that went really well this week? And you write those down and you make a list, 1 through 5, right? Then the next thing you say is, what are 3 things? Did you hear me not say 5, right? 3 to 5. I didn't say that. 3 things that could have gone better. 3 things that I could have done better or that could have gone better. Okay. And then what are 3 things that I want to improve upon in the next week? And so the first thing, 3 to 5 things that went really, really well. This is going to align you with positive energy so that your focus is on the good, right? Because the good is what you want to be focused on, because that's what's going to bounce back like a rubber band, and you're going to attract more good. Then, when you're talking about 3 things that you can improve upon, always say them in a positive way. Don't say them in a negative way. So, for instance, if maybe in your business you didn't get as many sales, so you can say, I 3 things I can improve upon is increasing my sales. You notice I didn't say I didn't get enough sales this week. Instead, I said increasing my sales, and then talk about how much you're going to increase it by. Like, attach a number to it and then attach your date, right? Maybe you're going to do it by Thursday instead of Friday. Like whatever it is, but that's going to help you increase that and bring that to you, versus if you were to put it in negative. Then you're going to do the third is 3 things that you can, that for the following week, like 3 like little goals. And that really helps you align and attract what you're wanting. And then you're breaking those generational curses. You're breaking those obstacles, those paradigms, because they're not. And then you're going to have little things hiccup. You're going to have little things happen, but your attitude is everything when that happens. So make sure you're watching your attitude and checking your attitude. Ask yourself, how was my attitude this week? How was my attitude today? Take moments throughout each day and just take a minute and say, how's my attitude today? How's my attitude this morning? How's my attitude right now? I think that when we can align our attitude with our thoughts and with the things that we're wanting versus the things we're not wanting, then we are really aligning. And that alignment is what's going to help you tackle those obstacles, help you tackle those things that come up to still keep you on track. And so many of us, something will come up and it's the end of the world. Where if you can check your attitude And sometimes it's just taking 5 minutes and just taking a break. Sometimes just clearing your mind. Other times it's taking a nap. Sometimes we need to eat. Maybe we need more water. These things really do make a difference. And so, fresh air is huge. And so, like, what are the things that you're doing to watch your attitude, to check it? What are things that you're doing for your well being? And then if you are recognizing generational curses and repetitive things that are happening in your family timeline, you have the power to change those. You don't have to settle for those. And you can just say that ends with me. And you keep affirming that ends with me. This ends with me. This this changes from me forward. My children and my grandchildren will have a healthier life. They'll have a better life. They're gonna they're gonna experience, and then you start speaking what you want them to experience. Claim the life that you want, and then start living that life. And I think that's truly what people don't do is they claim it and say they want it, but then they don't start living it. And so today is your reminder to go claim the life you want and then go live it. I hope this helps. I can't wait to talk more about it.